What's up, travelers? Welcome back to a new video on my channel where I share travel tips, personal knowledge, and my raw experiences of traveling around this beautiful planet that we get to call home. If this is your first time stopping by, welcome. My name is Sade. I take it you and I have a common passion for traveling and for learning about different cultures, so I greatly appreciate you clicking on this video. And as a refresher for those of you who have been following me throughout my journey and to get those new viewers caught up to speed, back in 2018, I quit my job and moved overseas for the first time with my husband, who serves in the US military. And man, what an adventure that has been. Let's just say we've been married less than 5 years and I've already moved 4 times. Yeah. Currently, we're back in the US after having lived in New Delhi, India just before the start and during the height of the pandemic. Even though that time was filled with so much uncertainty, tragedy of course, and many lockdowns, I'm still very thankful to have made a connection and a new friend in India, who you'll get to meet in this video. Over a 3-part series, we discuss in detail the differences between living in the US versus India from our respective perspectives. Guys, so much about traveling is a lesson in personal growth. It's about becoming a more and more well-rounded individual and less ignorant about the world, certainly. So I'm very thankful to my friend for joining me for this very enlightening conversation. Maybe you clicked on this video because you're either considering traveling to India or even living in India one day. If so, I hope that this conversation dispels any reservations that you might have, because India is amazing. I've traveled quite a few places now, and India is seriously incomparable to any other place I've had the privilege of visiting. This video picks up at the end of part 2 of our discussion, so if you haven't had the chance to check out those videos, be sure to click on the link just above here to get all caught up. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Now onto a stereotype that, just because I was a big fan of Indian Matchmaker on Netflix, if you haven't watched it. So this one might have a little bit of more truth to it. So Nadia and I were discussing arranged marriages. Yeah. I know some people back home in the States who are arranged marriages, but they've also been married for 35 years. Yeah. You know, so I mean, it worked, I guess, for them, but
yeah, I think, because I would say especially for women, women didn't feel they had the opportunities that we do now in this current time. My parents had an arranged marriage, and I think it worked in that generation. I wouldn't say it worked, but I would say it was.
Did you agree to an arranged marriage? Have your parents asked you?
Yeah, so very honestly, the concept of arranged marriage, I would say the definition has changed as well. So I would say, in my parents' time, very honestly, my mom never even went on a date with my dad.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
how long have you been married?
30 years. God. He literally came home, you have a system where you find profiles through references or whatever, and somebody had referred my dad to my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, and so my grandfather, checked off the boxes. He's like, oh, educated, has a stable job, check, has a degree, check. Doesn't look okay. It's okay.
Who cares what they look like? Yeah. Can they cook well?
Boys? No, they don't care about that. Yeah. I mean, my dad's side was probably like that. Can she cook?
Can she cook?
So yeah, that was it. They just came and met my granddad and my mom's older brother, and they asked a couple of questions, and and that was it.
Do they fall in love? Do they fall in love later? No.
I think it's a compromise.
It's a compromise. Yeah. It's for the family.
I mean, it's not the most pleasant thing to say, but I think that's what it is. So, but although that concept of arranged marriage has changed to the extent that, 2 of my best friends have had arranged marriages where they've been introduced to their respective partners by parents. But
a blind date, kind of like a Tinder. Swipe left.
Kind of, yeah. You're given a profile, in Indian matchmaking. You can choose to say no. Okay, but it's
you can choose to say no.
Yeah,
that's the one thing that is probably one of the biggest misconceptions is that whatever your parents say goes. No, the kids actually have some say.
Definitely in urban parts, for sure. It so happened that both of my good friends, like, you know, there's a courtship period where you keep meeting the person if you end up liking them, and like, you know, that's how you figure it out. So they did end up liking each other. Yeah, even though they were introduced by their respective parents, and they ended up liking each other, and they dated actually. You know, that is actually dating. Like, they dated, and I think that's more comfortable dating because, like, your parents know about it, so they're never gonna be like, oh, what are you meeting?
You don't have to have the time.
You know, come back at 10 o'clock. You know, so
true. You've already gotten over the big hurdle of your family because your parents obviously approve.
Exactly.
Because they're ready to marry you.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think it's worked out for them. You know,
would you be open to it? You think?
Like, they're already like, yeah, you know, like, same thing. My dad,
please invite me.
Engineer, check. Bengali, check. Like, my dad's already doing that list, you know. But yeah,
invite me to the wedding, Nani, because I'm trying to go to an Indian
girl.
wedding.
I'm just gonna have like a big ass party. Okay? Like, yeah, seriously. Like, I don't know if you know relatives.
Okay, so people have love marriages, people have arranged marriages.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But one of the topics that's pretty taboo here in India is your menstrual cycle. And like for us, like in the US, I think it was like 5th grade. Fill me up. 5th grade, we had basically lessons on, you know, what our period is, you know, what our menstrual cycle does, how long does it last, how our body changes.
Yeah.
And then I learned here that that's still pretty like a taboo. Well, maybe more so in the outer regions of.
No, schools do it now.
Schools do it now.
Schools do it. Mm-hmm. They still encourage you to abstain.
No sex.
Like, they don't even talk about protection. It's just abstain. Don't have sex. You will get pregnant and you will die. You know,
you're gonna die.
Like, or like society will disown you. You know, like.
If you got pregnant and out of wedlock, is that like you're like not good, right? Oh god, okay. We don't have,
you know, more than, oh my god, what am I gonna do with the baby? Like, how am I gonna? What will my parents say? Like, what will my great aunt say?
Not your great aunt.
Oh my god. You know, because word will travel. Like, my landlady's fucking nephew will know about it. You know, like. You know, so yeah, so that's a big deal.
Shame.
Like, it is. It's a very big deal here.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So it is talked about.
We kind of expected back in the States, like, oh, that bitch will be pregnant. 17, like.
But yeah, in a lot of rural areas and traditional Hindu teachings, they say that menstruation is a form of like impurity. So which is why
crazy, like it's the most natural thing.
It's crazy.
This is how women can produce life. You know, we basically pop out an egg, and then to make sure the egg is healthy and viable and meets like the highest quality of like the genome. You know, after a few days, it gets old and it has to go. Like, that's the most natural thing ever. So the fact that, like, I mean, we have science now that teaches that.
Yeah.
Why religion hasn't caught up is like, you know.
To be fair, you know, if you interpret, like, even if, I don't know, whichever, if you follow the Gita in Hinduism or whatever, I don't think, to be fair, they honestly, they explicitly say that, okay? But there are these like ancient saints and they're not
men, people without vaginas.
Men. Okay, there's something called the Manusmriti, okay, which is the most, excuse my French, fucking misogynistic, like, verse or text, okay, which is basically trying to suppress women as much as possible, which talks about this. It talks about like how widows are the scum of the earth, okay, and they need to like give up meat, give up all forms of joy basically, you know, and wear white the entire time and basically live a very, very like
austere, just like
with no joy,
a shameful life.
Yeah, because God forbid a woman has any role beyond that of being a wife.
Yeah,
and a child.
And it has nothing to do with, it's just like the patriarchy, control.
Yeah. So in a lot of, actually, because of that impurity notion, women actually sleep like outside the house. Like in a lot of rural settings, there's a separate sort of hut made for the girl to go and sleep there during the 5-6 days of menstruation.
That's insane.
And there have been cases where, you know, girls have died from snake bites.
Oh wow, because they're putting themselves out in danger, basically, just because they're on their periods, which we cannot control. Like, you get it?
They cannot go into temples,
which is insane. Like,
right? Because why the fuck does God care whether you're menstruating, as long as, look, I'm not religious, okay, but like, if you believe, right, if you pray, God doesn't care.
He created you, supposedly, right? Like,
yeah. And like I said, Hindu gods are deities, like they're women.
Mm-hmm.
That's the irony of it, you know? So it is really ridiculous, and how menstruation is such like a taboo.
Do you think our generation has evolved and kind of are changing our perceptions on like these old, very fanatical kind of ideals of you know, what society should be like and how women should be treated? Do you think? I hope our generation and the generation that's following us makes me feel very hopeful.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like my generation, you know,
this is my baby girl.
You to buy these. Oh, you could tell.
My baby.
So my generation, I would say, like, you know, at least I can still go into the kitchen and cook. Like, I think with my mom's generation, like, they would not be allowed in the kitchen. Really? Menstruating. They wouldn't.
You can't cook because you're on your period?
Yeah, they wouldn't be allowed to touch, like, prayer vessels or, you know, stuff like that.
I think my biggest frustration in terms of like what in the US that we have to pay tax on our pads, like our menstruation like products, and that like nothing makes me so mad to pay that 7% on pads and tampons, because they're already expensive. Okay, you're paying like $7 for a pack of pads or whatever.
I think all women's healthcare products are more expensive. Yeah, shampoos. Why they do it? Like they just say fancy shit, and they're just like,
it's more expensive. It's more expensive for us as well. It's ridiculous. It's not fair, but I mean that's how it is. So we definitely have that in common.
Yeah, for sure.
We have that in common. I think one thing that sets India apart from like Americans is one of the biggest stereotypes is that we're all fat. And perhaps there's a lot of truth in that, you know. Per my research, around 68% of Americans are obese. And
but you know, these are lifestyle things, okay? Americans are fat because of seriously, Americans are fat because they eat fast food and stuff.
We do.
Okay?
We do.
But Indians also like it. I mean, like, please move your butt. Like, you know,
but you guys eat better than we do. At least you eat home-cooked meals.
But you know, they're sitting the entire day.
Do you remember I was saying to you, like, you know, how the differences are, like, we die of like cardiac arrest and like these, I hate to call them privileged diseases, as a result of the lifestyle, right? Yeah. Whereas the differences here is like you have like dengue, like cholera, like or dengue or whatever. Dengue, sorry. It's just like because it has to do with like how a lifestyle.
I mean, again, I think the causes of death also differ from class to class, right? Like, middle class, again, honestly, same thing. Like, most people are dying of obesity because diabetes, heart disease,
hypertension,
because they just don't fucking move, you know, and they're just eat. So I know you think it's healthy, but you know that ghee, that
like the buttery,
yeah. So Punjabis and North Indians like laser it on their rotis.
It's so good.
It is yummy, but not when you're cooking every fucking thing in it and not losing a muscle.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that's a saturated fat. It's a healthy fat in a restricted quantity. But
when you eat it with every meal every day, 3-4 times a day, I mean, in excess, nothing is going to be healthy for you, right? Let's talk a little bit about some of the health, like the more positive stereotypes. Like me personally, similarly to like other Asian cultures, I feel like Indians have a very strong bond like for families. Like families is a very central focus, whereas in the US, particularly my generation, the emphasis of marriage and like kids is not as strong as say it was a few generations ago, because the economy has changed, right? Like people are struggling.
Yeah.
It's not like my parents who could afford to live off of one income. You know, the wife was home taking care of the kids. Now both parents have to work. Like, and most of the times the women are the breadwinners in the household. Where India, you guys do have like a very strong bond of like families.
I think that also boils down to again political theory. So America is staunchly capitalist. India comes from, you know, more socialist, I would say, economy. And it's actually, so I don't know if you guys have read Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand talks about this in Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. She's a staunch capitalist and she believes in individualism and selfishness. Like she propagates that. Like there's a whole school of Americans who are just like, me first. Mm-hmm. And that's the thinking that, you know, drives profit and drives self-gain, puts yourself first before anybody else.
And it's attributed to lots of success in the US. It's very much ingrained in our culture. It's not a bad thing, but it's not without its downsides, right?
Yeah.
You know, you give so much to one thing, without that balance, another thing is bound to suffer.
But I mean, like I would say the positive aspect of that is like, you know how you guys have like, you know, when you turn 18, they like literally kick you out of the house.
Get your shit, time to go.
So here, because
Latinos are not like that. I can live with my grandmother, with my 5 kids, and my husband's 50. It's just white Americans.
Yeah.
Even Black Americans are like, okay, you're 18, what you doing with your life? It's different. But it's a cultural thing too.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's, to a certain extent, I think that's a good thing, because it teaches you to be self-dependent. Because, like, I left home when I was 16, okay, and that's the reason I'm self-dependent, okay, because I had to learn to do things by myself. But
not the norm.
Yeah, but there are so many of my contemporaries, even at my age, living at home, you know, and they have never, like, washed their own cup. It's crazy. Okay, I'm like, dude, like, do you ever clean your room? You know, they have a driver to take them to places. They've never used public transport.
Listen, that was one of the things, like, I know that I'm living because I'm an expat here, right? And I'm coming from a Western way of living to India. So the idea that I don't have, okay? But the idea that I could, if I want to have a driver, I don't have children, but if I had, I can get a nanny, I can have a house help, a dog walker, like, you know, and even regular people in here, the middle class here has house staff. Like, it's very, very common.
Yeah.
For me, I think that's a part of the culture too. Yeah. Like the middle class in the US, first of all, it's too expensive. But like as a pride issue, we don't really have needs. Like you have to be really wealthy.
I think it's also,
and I house staff, because I hate that word needs.
Yeah.
It sounds very cool.
So very honestly, like, I mean, I think it also comes down to what your definition of a maid is. Like, I mean, my house help, like, I call her Didi, which means older sister. Like,
You guys are friends, like you have a relation, like a
yeah, we try and take care of each other. And I mean, like in my grandparents' house, the lady who's cooking for us, you know, she's been there for 40 years. She's seen my mom go through college. She's seen me being born, and my sister and my cousins, and like, you know, she's fed us and like bathed us and everything, you know.
Is she like the auntie?
We call her auntie. Like, we call her auntie. Like, even though she's not related by blood, like I call her, you know, and we take care of her, like, you know, during Diwali or Durga Puja. Like, my grandmother would send her money to send back to her family in the village and everything, you know. Healthcare, get her insurance, get her a bank account, you know, all of these things are important. So also I think the idea that it's a big thing is because in America I think maids are more expensive.
So expensive.
Yeah, but that's not the case here.
So expensive.
Yeah.
Like, I think for someone to come clean your home, just, you know, a full cleaning, a 2-bedroom house or 3-bedroom house may cost you like $100 US, which is maybe around 7,000 rupees for one day. Like,
That's like how much they would get paid for 2.5 months.
That's, see?
Yeah.
This is why I want to go back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you say that, like, in terms of how you view Americans, like, would you say, because I like to think of us as like the eternal optimists, like, we try to be, even though it's flawed in many ways, but that's like a stereotype of ours. But I would agree that we're always like, you know, city on the, what is the thing? Shining city on the hill, I think is the American dream. And our country does try to be very generous. Like, we do give a lot of money to a lot of world, but not with our own self-interest. Like, let's keep it honest.
I was actually going to talk about that.
We don't give money away just because out of the goodness of our heart. We give money away with the intention that we're going to get something in return.
Like trade deals, you know,
some type of privilege. We have bases and diplomats all over the world. You know, there's some type of a privilege. There's an exchange.
Like a small thing is like how expat cars don't have to pay toll tax on the road.
We don't. We get special plates. We have immunity in the country. Like, so if we're speeding, unless it's like reckless, like, typically you won't get pulled over. Like, there are certain privileges that diplomats.
You guys are like a different class of citizens in India. I think that comes from, you know, well, historically that comes from like oppression and colonialization. But I think the optimism also comes from privilege as well.
It is.
The land of dreams. I'm not doubting that. Like, very honestly, so many Indians and people from other countries, the reason they go to America is because they want to live the American dream.
And that's the one thing I would give America credit for.
For sure.
Immigrants can come to the US with nothing. Like,
for sure.
The stories that you hear of someone coming with like $20 in their pockets and multiplying that, buying their own home, sending their kids off to college, starting their own businesses, that is true. Like, it's harder to do now, but it's still possible in the US, whereas here in India, to my understanding, it's much harder. With the caste system, we didn't even talk about like.
So I mean, like, so before we get into like a caste system, like, say 30 years ago, you know, an Indian man goes to America because, you know, he wants to live the American dream, and he starts like a food business. Right, a lot of like Chinese have done that, right?
I love Chinese.
And they started like their food business there, you know. And it's still,
thank you to the Chinese immigrants. I like Chinese food.
And it's still considered valuable work with dignity. Right. I would definitely give it to Americans because of that. Because like we were talking about this, right? Like, the dignity associated with different occupations. Like in India, if you were like a waiter somewhere, people would treat you very, very differently. You know, it's not considered like you're doing such a good job. you know, but
like I think I was explaining to her, like the sanitation workers, people who collect trash, or people who do the maintenance and of our sewer systems. Those are some of the highest paying, you know, public jobs that you can get, because we understand like the value of that work, because it's not an easy job to do. Whereas here in India, people, I mean, even though the caste system has been officially abolished. And we're back. Okay, so one thing I felt that it was really, really important to bring up, and as I was telling Nandi, because I cannot deny I'm a Black girl, I'm a brown girl, and so you all know, my Black and brown travelers, that our experiences are oftentimes different. You know, depending on where we go or anywhere we go in the world, even in my home country, my experience is going to be different. And I've actually had people, other Black female travelers, and male travelers have said to me, you know, I have reservations about going to India because of, I've heard that Indians don't like Black people or disfavor Black, darker skinned people. So I thought that was something to really bring up with Nandi, because I don't know if that's a stereotype or if there's any truth to that.
Honestly, I'm Indian, but I think Indians can be some of the most racist people. And again, like the issue is very much systemic, and it goes back like centuries in something that we call the caste system, which is, I would say, the equivalent to the race struggle in America. The caste system, again, although I would say it's slightly more complex, because, you know,
I know, I don't like it either, Copy. It really makes me angry.
She just wants attention. Okay. Because it actually, so scripture-wise, it comes from birth. Okay. So the caste you were born into. Okay. Now the caste is a determination of, so your occupation determines caste, historically, of course. You know, and there are like 4 major castes. Okay. If you follow the Varna system, which is called, you know, so there's the Brahmin, okay, which are mostly the priestly caste, okay, they're like pure and
fair skin. You'll hear that term a lot.
Historically, landowning, aristocratic, property owning, wealthy, okay, and it's just like how Black people and other people of color have been oppressed in a place like America, where you can't just say it's a problem of today. It goes back to slavery. Yeah. Right? You can't just be like, oh, you know, it's just you. No. Like the reason I'm in the position I am today and the opportunities I can afford is the result of the, you know, the opportunities that were afforded by my great-great-grandfather and grandmother.
It's systemic.
It's systemic.
And on that note, even in the more Christian religions in the state, a lot of the times the scriptures were used to justify, you know, the enslavement of Black people and the mistreatment of brown people as well. So there's also that a religious component to that.
And I mean, the irony is that, you know, when Indians, because of the skin color, go to other countries like the West, okay, they are treated differently. Like, you know, if I went to Africa, like, to be honest, like, I mean, even though I grew up in Zambia, like, if I went to South Africa as a tourist, right, I would see a white person get more,
they're better treated, they're treated better.
Than, even though I'm paying the same thing, but it's just how it is. Also in the caste system, you know, lower castes are associated with darker colored skin because of occupation, and they do like much more manual labor and what we call scavengers, cleaning out sewers. It's pretty bad. So the irony is that, you know, Indians are actually discriminated against, but then when we have people of color come in, they're like, oh, who are these people? You know, like, it's, yeah, so I would definitely say that's hypocrisy. And I mean, it is kind of shameful. I feel really bad.
It is shameful, Copy.
When people I know, you know, behave like that.
I will say though, I haven't I mean, I've had some wealthier women kind of look at me funny, but maybe because they're just interested in the way that I look. I don't know. I'm just assuming. I haven't been mistreated or treated differently because of the color of my skin, or at least I haven't felt that way. And I think that's attributed to the privilege that I carry of just being American. You know, like I think.
Also, like your skin color is not fully black.
No, yeah, of course. Even in the States, I know I'm very much aware of the fact that I carry a privilege of being a lighter skinned African American, Hispanic person.
Because like, you know, in Bangalore, for example, and I mean even in other cities, but in Bangalore, for example, look at my kids. There's a pretty significant African population, okay, and like a lot of people from like Western Africa, so Cote d'Ivoire, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and they have like, you know, beautiful dark chocolate skin, you know,
beautiful dark chocolate skin.
Yeah, and I mean they're clearly black, and so they actually face a lot of discrimination, and I mean it's unfortunate, but it's something that we are trying to raise awareness and yeah, I suppose, like, you know, we're fighting a lot of battles. So.
I guess the button that I want to pin in that conversation is that for my fellow African American, black, darker skin, brown travelers, don't let that be a deterrent to you getting the fullest potential out of your travel experience, because no country is exempt from racism. Not America, not even the most developed Western countries, you know, and no country is perfect. Like every country comes with its flaws, but I think when you get down to the micro level of meeting people individually, most people are kind, I found. Anyways, throughout my travel. Obviously there are exceptions, but it's the exception, it's not the norm. And so don't let that take away from your experience from traveling through the rest of the world, because the world is beautiful. And I think, you know, if you're afraid to come to India because you're black and you're afraid that Indians are going to treat you poorly, come here and prove them wrong. You know, let them get to know you. Let them see how an amazing person you are. Change their mind on their perception of, or the stereotypes that we discuss and how they feel about black and brown people, because, you know, a lot of this crap is garbage. You know, obviously some of it is funny and has some truth to it, but how I want to end this video, actually, it's a good segue, is, and the reason why I wanted to do this video is to help break down some of those stereotypes. And like, to do that, you kind of have to combat stereotypes with engaging with people in different cultures. This is why I say continue to travel, continue meeting people, talking to people, engaging with people.
Move out of your comfort zone. You know, I think the biggest thing, and to be honest, like I think Indians do that a lot when they go out of the country, is to bunch up among themselves. But that being said, because they really want to adapt, and you know, they really adapt, you know, they want to. But I think that, you know, one of the biggest ways of learning is observing and asking questions. So,
don't be afraid. Like Nandi and I, we had a lot of like hot button issues, but it's like you have to have these conversations sometimes. Be courageous enough to have them, because this is how you grow, this is how you learn, you know? And I am really thankful for her for being so open and you know, and Copy too, you know, like for being so open, because like travel is like the best education you will ever get. Like you will learn more about the world just by stepping on a plane or a bus or a train or going to the next city. You know, diversifying your surroundings. This is like I posted a picture recently. I'll post it up here somewhere on the screen of me, Nani, and another girlfriend of mine that went to Agra. Like, I love it when my friends, we look like the diversity page out of a college pamphlet, because it's important for me to have friends who represent all different backgrounds and thoughts and philosophies, because this is how you go, right? And you find out that you have more in common with someone than you do. Then you have differences, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the bigger reasons also that like we connected, for example, and I mean I don't don't mean to keep bringing it up, but I think that politics is an essential part of who we all are and how we live our lives. So is the fact that, you know, you are Latina and you are Black and you understand how when you were in the world and you are treated and you come from a suppressed population or a colonialized population, that your outlook towards the world is very different.
Yeah, we were raised differently, different parts of the world, but we still have the same struggles, man. Like,
I mean,
on a human level, we understand each other because we, you know, the society is what it is. Yeah.
I think it boils down to privilege as well.
Yeah. So, and with that said, too, I think it's also important when you travel, even though you're trying to broaden your horizons, to also be respectful of the cultures and traditions. Because, like, I lived almost 2 years in Bahrain. It's very, very different culturally from the Western world. It's, you know, exponentially more conservative. However, I fell in love with the culture. You know, it's a predominantly Muslim culture, and I have to respect, you know, where they come from. And they were also really beautiful people to me. Even though we have our differences, there has to be somewhat of a level. You don't have to agree. You know, obviously there's a lot of things that I don't agree with culturally, just because I'm not a conservative person generally. I think across the board, I'm just, even here in the government, that the majority government in India, I have nothing in common. It's more of a I'm more progressive, me personally, but
right wing.
It's more right wing. Yeah. But I think it's still important. As an expat, I think there's a component of my time here that is dedicated to observing and absorbing, you know, because I don't want to come in just judging, you know, because there's always a history and a context to things. And again, I'm coming from a privileged situation where I can't be like, America's the best, we do things the right way. No, people have their ways of doing things, whether we agree with it or not. Things are changing. Yeah. You know, the art is always curving towards progress, but I think that's also important too, not to check your privilege. That's what I'm saying. Okay, I think we are done with this video, right? This is a good conversation. Listen, I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in this like multi-part series of this very important conversation, I think, about learning the differences, particularly between, you know, the Indian cultures and way of living versus the American. I hope this gave you some insight, and I hope it kind of changed your mind. If you're teetering on the edge of whether you want to come visit India, I obviously will say yes, fucking come to India, because it's life-changing on its own. And I want to thank Nandi so much for partaking in this conversation, and I'm so grateful for your contributions to the conversation, and just for being my friend. Like, I'm very thankful to her. Like, I'll think about this, my time here in India, and Nandi's going to be a big part of that story, like, for the rest of my life. So thank you guys again so much. If you enjoyed this video, please give a thumbs up. And always, I'm wishing you guys tons of peace and love. And I will catch you guys in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.